Good evening, everybody. We have two important literary theories school that today we are going to discuss about. These two schools of thought completely change how we read and interpret text. Okay, apart from what we have discussed so far, whether it's new criticism, whether it's new historicism, or yesterday we have done the Russian formalism, the formalism. But we have seen the difference of all these literary schools, and today we are going to discuss beyond that. So from viewing meaning as stable and systematic, a question meaning itself, this transition defines modern literary theory. So we are going to discuss here in this video. I will explain you the background, the key thinkers of all. It keep the video, but before starting, do subscribe the channel. Subscribe the channel, everybody. And for the PDF notes, you can simply join the Telegram channel. And if you do not wish to join, you can ask me in the comment for the PDF, or you can join the membership. You can take the membership for the PDF. Okay. So let's start the class. Do watch till end and please share. Let all the students access of the class so that they can also prepare. Specifically, the students who are doing self-study now, do share to them also. So now we are going to discuss about the structuralism, which is very important for the exam perspective and for your syllabus. Structuralism, this is going to be helpful for all type of exam, English literature. So structuralism and the difference between the post-structuralism. Okay. By differentiating all the literary schools, we will find and you will grab the key point. Okay, it will help you to solve the questions. So structuralism is a theory that treats text as a system of signs and structures. Like we have discussed in Russian formalism, their major focus on form, structure, instead of any other external background, historical background they have discarded, and the ideas was adopted by new criticism, new critic writers. Okay. So what we have seen in the new historicism, they were talking about that we should focus on the historical background, author's intention, author's background, reader's intention, their response. So new criticism, Russian formalism, they have discarded all those and told us to focus on the text only to find out the meaning and how language form actually how it means, not what it means. So similarly, structuralism, here it focus on the system of signs. System of signs, that means when you think something or when we are talking about, there is a system, there is a sign. And by those signs, what we create in our mind, we are going to study in the structuralism and post-structuralism. Okay, so stay tuned. Do not miss any part of the video. So here meaning comes from relationship and contrast within a system, not from isolated elements. Okay, not from the isolated elements. So this was the thinking of structuralism. Structuralism was arised in the early to mid 20th century, rooted in linguistics. Ferdinand de Saussure, the Swiss linguistic we all know. Okay, anthropology, Levi-Strauss, the Prague School, and later literary semiotics. It gained prominence in the 1950s and 1960s. So structuralism topic is very important. Remember, it studies the system of a sign. Okay, system of a sign. Key figures of the structuralism we can find Ferdinand de Saussure. We know him as a father of structuralism. For Ferdinand de Saussure, course in general linguistics, very important work. He gave us the concept of sign, signifier, and signified. Lang versus parole, structural view of language as a system. Okay, we will later discuss all things. Then Claude Levi-Strauss, in his work Structural Anthropology 1958, he applied a structural method to myth, kinship, archetypal structures, binary oppositions. Remember all the key points, like what are the What are the words that is associated with the specific writer? Okay, it will help us, it will help you to find out the question and identify the question correctly. Then Vladimir Prof we have in his work Morphology of the Folktale 1928, he mapped functions in Russian folktales and he talked about universal narrative functions. Like Noam Chomsky talked about the generative grammar. Roland Barthes, Mythologies 1957, Elements of Semiology 1964, and Structural Analysis of Narratives 1966. Semiotic analysis of culture, he talked about with myth as a science system, narrative structure, and codes. Okay, so very, very important they are. Then we have Zvetan Todorov, The Poetics of Prose, etc. He talked about narratology, models of narrative like codes, structure, and genres. And Gerard Janet, very important, narrative discourse and essay in method, distinctions like a story versus discourse, voice, focalization, and time. This is already a PYQ focalization related to Gerard Janet, remember. Then we have Jonathan Culler, Structuralist Poetics, Structuralism, Linguistics and the Study of Literature, 1975. He offers an English introduction to structuralism. He said, how to use structural methods in literary study, how to use. So these were the key writers, key literary theorists that gave us their core ideas to study a literature, to study a work, to interpret the meaning of a work. Okay. Now let's discuss what were the key concepts. So key concept here, the very important, sign, signifier and signified in the work General Linguistic by Ferdinand de Saussure, who was a Swiss linguist, we find sign means basic unit of meaning in language. It consists of two parts. The first signifier and the second signified. Okay, sign is the basic unit of meaning in language that defined, and there is two part you have to remember. Signifier, the sound image from the word tree, you can remember when you heard a word tree, so you immediately visualize the object tree in your mind, and the object that you are here creating in your mind is become signified. Okay, that became signified. The object that you are creating by hearing any word, the picture that comes to your mind by hearing anything, that object becomes signified, and the word that you hear is a signifier. Okay, it's a signifying you that now you are able to create the picture of that related word. Okay, so this is what the concept of signifier and signified. Very, very important. Do understand the concept, everybody. The meaning is created by relationship between signifier and signifier, not by reference to the real object. Okay. Then another one we have here, you can see I have mentioned the picture. This is the sign. Okay. Then this is the image you have. If somebody is talking about the tree, so tree is an object that you know how it looks. So by hearing the word tree, you have created the object of tree in your mind. So that became the signified. So it is the mental concept. Mental concept in the sense the object that you have created in your mind by hearing the signifier, the object, the letters, icon, or sound, or word. Okay. So this is the meaning of sign, signifier, and signified according to Ferdinand de Saussure. So this is what the structure they were talking about in the structuralism. Then another one we have Lang versus Parole. There is a very helpful note I have of this signifier and signified, and also very soon I'm going to share my paper one notes. You will find out and English literature also. The specific topic that is important from any perspective, any exam perspective, whether you are preparing for PGT, VR, or whether you're PGT only, TGT only, Bitter plus B, UPLT grade, or UGC net. This type of some topic you have in English that always appears. So Lang versus Parole, according to Ferdinand de Saussure, Lang is the system or a structure of a language. Okay, system or a structure of a language that have language forms, like we have by combining grammar rules, conventions shared by community, and parole, how you perform those language. It is the by individual or the group of people. So how people actually speak or write by using the structure of language. So this is the difference between Lang and Parole. Structuralism studies Lang as a system and Parole as individual expressions. Okay, individual expressions. It's very easy to understand. Once you will understand, you won't find any difficulty. Okay, you can easily solve the questions. Now, another important we have in structuralism, synchronic versus diachronic. So what was the structuralist approach of synchronic? Synchronic is the study of language, that literature or cultural system at a specific point of time. Once you are going to differentiate between structurally synchronic and diachronic, you have to remember two things. Synchronic is the specific point of time and diachronic is the over time. Over time. Okay, I will explain you how. So, a specific point in time as a complete structure. Structuralists are interested in how the system works now, not how it developed. Okay, specific point in time, like for example, we are all living in 21st century. So there are a lot of words we are hearing day by day, and lot of words in Cambridge or Oxford University we find. So we go according to that. According to that, we do not try to find out that or in a specific period of time, or the in ancient ages, or the in the very beginning of the ages when the language were forming by the linguistics, what were they have decided the meaning, what they have decided and given us the meaning. But instead of that, we are focusing on the latest pattern that we find in Cambridge or Oxford University's dictionary, right? So this is the specific point in time synchronic refers to. How the everything is developed, we do not find out. Instead, how the system works now, we focus on that. Key focus you have to in synchronic, it's a structure, relationship between the elements and rules and patterns that organize meaning. Okay, example you can here understand the synchronic. If we study English grammar today, focusing on how words function in modern usage, like we now in English grammar specifically we focused on subject verb agreement, subject verb objective SVO structure. SVO structure, we follow the tenses, we follow the parts of the speech. So we are here doing the synchronic analysis. Instead of, we are not going to find out that once the language was creating by the linguistic, what were their pattern, what they taught us to follow, not going through the SVO structure instead of their old method. So this is the current method we everybody is now following. Okay, so this is the example in language. Now, example in literature, if we go, so like for example, analyzing Hamlet to understand its internal structures, like we can follow the characters, oppositions, like that follow the life, death, action, inaction, reaction, everything, without considering its historical changes or Shakespeare's biography. Okay, Shakespeare's biography. So this is the example in literature of a synchronic. Now let's move to the diachronic, everybody. Diachronic, I told you to remember over time or through time. So study of language or text over a time. Now, unlike synchronic, we are focusing on the specific period of time, the meaning that is now followed by everybody. And here in this diachronic, from the very beginning and throughout now, how the word of meaning changes, how the meaning changes and form the another meaning. That is what diachronic told us. So study of language or text through or over the time, that means it how it evolves, changes in form or meaning. If you remember, do you remember I have gave you the example of gay? Like in earlier ages, gay was supposed to be the beautiful, this word meaning I have told you. But now the gay meanings is something else. We all know it represents the sexual identity of a person. So this is what the uh, orientation, sexual orientation of a person, individual. So this is the difference between. So how over the time the meaning of the word changes and form the meaning. This is what diachronic told you, tells you. This approach traces the history and development of a system. Okay, so in this we can talk about how the word developed. Its major focus, diachronic's major focus, you must remember, historical development, evolution of meanings and change over time. Okay, evolution of meanings, change over time, very, very important. If you want to remember synchronic and diachronic, two things you have to remember, specific point of time that you have. I've given you the very easy example, daily life example, synchronic, and changes over time, diachronic. Example you can see in of diachronic in language, studying how the English word night changed from Old English night. See the difference in the spelling. So this is what I was talking about, meaning servant. Old English, it means old, in Old English, it means servant, okay? Servant. But now is how the word is changed, the spelling and the meaning also. The meaning also, and how the meaning is also changed. So the old English means was servant, and knight means noble warrior. Knight means here now we talk about yodha or the noble warrior, right? So this is the difference between synchronic and diachronic. Now I hope you have got the point. In literature, like tracing how the idea of heroism evolved from Homer's Iliad to modern novels, how cultural values changed over centuries. We can take the example of movies, heroism. Okay, so it's easy to understand. Now, another important term in structuralism, binary oppositions by Claude Levi-Strauss. Very, very important. This is human thought and culture often organize meaning through opposites, like good versus evil, male versus female, nature versus culture, life versus death. So binary opposition, whenever you heard something like this opposition, you can simply click in your mind that oppositions, they are talking about the opposite words. Okay, so this oppositions structure myths, stories, and beliefs. Structuralists analyze how these opposite works together to form the deeper structure of meaning. By here, good is defining something else that in a good way, and evil is totally opposite of the what good refers. So this is the difference between binary oppositions. This is what binary oppositions refers. Okay, this is what binary opposition refers. Now, another one we have narrative function, Vladimir Prof. In Morphology of the Folktale 1928, Prof identified 31 narrative functions. Remember, how many? 31 narrative functions like villainy, donor's test, hero's victory. All folk tales, according to him, he argued, follow a universal pattern of characters and actions. Okay, he's talking about the universal pattern. He is talking about universal pattern of characters and actions. This showed that stories can be studied like a grammar with repeating structural units. Repeating structural units, okay? Then another important topic we have codes. Codes, narrative, mythological, semantic by Roland Barthes. Codes are system of signs that help create meaning in a text. According to Roland Barthes, code is a system of sign like we have signifier, signs. It helps to create meaning in the text, okay? And what are the few important several Roland Barthes also identified several types of codes, and what are those? Here you can remember hermeneutic code, that mystery or enigma in a story. Pro Proerect, proerectic code, actions or events that drive the plot. Cultural code, shared knowledge or beliefs. Semantic code, connotations and meaning of words. And symbolic code, deeper symbolic meanings like we have love, death, and power, etc. Together, all these codes form the structure of a narrative meaning according to Roland Barthes. So remember the code, everybody. Then another one we have semiotics. Semiotics is very important. It's a study of sign and sign system. Okay. In semiotic, we study about the sign. Okay. How signs created. Semiotic is the science of signs. How meaning is made through signs. symbols, and codes like language, images, sounds, and gestures. So it was developed from sources linguistic and applied by Barth to literature, fashion, advertisement, and media. Remember, it is the concept, the sign is the concept by Ferdinand de Saussure, but it is later applied by Roland Barthes to literature. So Ferdinand de Saussure was linguistics, right? So this idea by Ferdinand de Saussure, Roland Barthes, bring to literature. It treats culture itself as a language made up of signs that can be read and interpreted. By using these signs, once it defines the meaning, we can use these signs to interpret the meaning, interpret the text. Okay. Then what are the methods that they use? So I hope you have a clear the point of structuralism. Structuralism, what you studied, you have to remember about all the writers like Ferdinand de Saussure, Claude Levi-Strauss, Roland Barthes, Joachim Todro, and their core concept, sign, signifier, signified, lang and parole. Lang is the lang, which is a system that is rules of language, how language form, and parole is an individual speech act. Is speech act that means how those language performed by the individuals. Okay, binary oppositions. Binary oppositions. The opposite word we do, like good versus evil, male versus female. So this is, you can remember, synchronic versus diachronic. Synchronic, you can remember the specific point of time, and diachronic you can remember as the evolution, or you can simply remember the overtime, through overtime, how there is a change. So these are the important highlights of structuralism, everybody. Now let's see the difference between structuralism. So structuralism in literature is very important. It focuses on how narratives are structured, following the patterns, codes, functions, everything. And now let's see what are the key facts of post-structuralism and core concepts and the linguist writers, okay, literary theorists. So post-structuralism. Post-structuralism develops after structuralism. So in chronology, you can move on to structuralism, move on from structuralism to post-structuralism. 1960s and 70s were the time onwards. It reacts. So post-structuralism, you can simply remember, it was the reaction. It was the reaction against what structuralism told us, what they defined us. So structuralism's confidence in fixed structure by following the pattern, sign, whatever they told, and universal meanings and stable sign system. So it was the reaction. Okay, like we have studied in. So it emphasizes that meaning is always differed. Post-structuralism is the literary theory that will tell you that meaning is not fixed, but meaning always differ. Meaning is always one differ. Language is unstable according to post-structuralist, and binary oppositions are problematic. So, one thing that we have seen in the other other literary theorists, when we are moving on to the next one, they are discarding their ideas, they are rejecting their ideas. Okay, like the historist idea were rejected by new criticism. Similarly, here structuralist, what they said, the post-structuralist writers, theorists are discarding their point of view, their opinion about how language forms. So they are saying meaning is not fixed, they are differed. They are saying language is unstable, not stable, and binary oppositions are tricky. Binary oppositions are tricky and problematic. Here they have given the example in this post-structuralism. Now we will study about the Jacques Derrida. Okay, so deconstruction is the major key concept in post-structuralism that is associated with Jacques Derrida and others, is a method within post-structuralism. So one key point you have to grab. Key figures and their works. Key figures and their works in post-structuralism. We have the very first and most important, Jacques Derrida. Very, very important, everybody. Of grammatology, this work is very, very important. 1967, you can cross check the year. Writing and difference, etc. They have introduced deconstruction, difference, critique of logocentrism, and he said that meaning is never fixed. That means difference. Okay, deferred. Another key writers we have a key theorist, Michel Foucault, Discipline and Punish and the Archaeology of Knowledge. He studied discourse, power, knowledge, and how historical discourses shape truth. Then Roland Barthes, in The Death of the Author 1967 and S. 1970, questioned the authority of the author. Writerly versus readerly text is given by Roland Barthes, and multiplicity of meaning is also talked by Roland Barthes. Okay. Then another one we have Julia Kristeva, essay on intertextuality, the idea that texts are interconnected. Meaning arises from relations among the text. Then Paul de Man, we have various essays he has given us and talked about the metaphor, rhetoric, and emphasized rhetorical reading and tropes and textual instability. So all these writers here now in post-structuralism are talking about the unstable meaning of the work. Unstable meaning. Key concept you can remember, deconstruction by Jacques Derrida. It exposing contradictions, aporias, internal tensions in text. Very, very important. Then difference is also by Derrida. That means meaning is differ. Meaning arises because things differ. How we interpret the meaning. Logocentrism, that means prevailing speech presents origin in meaning, and post-structuralism criticizes it. Author, Death of the Author by Roland Barthes. He said author's intended meaning is not the central source of meaning, but once the writer has written the work, their work is finished. Now it's up to the reader how they create meaning, how they interpret meaning. Okay. Intertextuality, Julia Kristeva, she talked about text influence each other. No text is original in isolation. Then power discourse, Michel Foucault talked about how discourse shapes what can be said, who can speak, and what is accepted knowledge. Okay. So these are the important points of structuralism. These are the important points of structuralism. Now let's see what is the difference between structuralism versus post-structuralism. We will discuss if we will have enough time now. We will discuss separately Jacques Derrida, Roland Barthes by going very much in detail. So here now I am highlighting the literary theory as part of the Unit 9 English Literature. So structuralism versus post-structuralism, view of meaning. So how structuralism viewed meaning? According to structuralism, meaning is stable and produced by the structures of language, science or culture. Okay, this was their idea. This was their point of view, structuralist. And post-structuralist, structuralist on the other hand, according to them, see, here is the difference. They said meaning is unstable and it constantly shifting and always differed. There is no language, science or culture that will fix the meaning, but they are constantly shifting. Okay, continuous shift in the meaning you will find. What was the approach of structuralism? So structuralism, that structuralist emphasizes key structures like binary oppositions and universal myth. This was the approach of a structuralist. And post-structuralist, while other hand, they question structure as oversimplified and inadequate. Here, binary oppositions are also discarded. Then, role of the author in structuralism: author is marginal or ignored. Focus is on the system or archetypes. Okay, so here they have discarded author's And post-structuralism, authorial intention is challenged and the author remains marginalized. Then what is the role of author? In structuralism, the role of the reader to decode the structure, limited interpretive role. And while in the post-structuralism, reader plays a central role while creating the meaning, and reading is open-ended and interpretive. This is the huge difference between structuralism and post-structuralism. Okay. Then relation to historical and socio-political context in structuralism. According to structuralists, it is less emphasis, analysis is formal and synchronic, while in post-structuralism, they integrates power, discourse, ideology, and historical context. So, what are the key points that you will grab from the post-structuralism? You can remember that it was the emergence in the year 1960s to 70s. Okay, and what was it was the reaction, it was the reaction of a structuralism. Okay, then you can simply remember that post-structuralist argues that meaning is unstable, unstable, differ, differ, and where I should write constantly changed, constantly change. Okay, these are the key points you can remember about the post-structuralism. Post-structuralism and deconstruction. Deconstruction you have to remember, differ. These are the key points you can remember. Then you can remember the work of grammatology, the death of the author, power, discourse, and knowledge, Julia Kristeva, Jacques Lacan, Jacques Derrida, Roland Barthes, Michel Foucault. Apart from the core concept, you can remember deconstruction, Derrida's method to show contradiction within the text. And according to him, what he said that every text undermines its own meaning. He gave the concept of difference, deconstruction. Then we can move on to the intertextuality. Intertextuality by Julia Kristeva. She said every text is made of other text. Intertextuality, intertextuality. One thing you can simply remember: every text is made of other text. Like you put example of how should I explain you? Intertextuality in one text, if you are talking about now, you are taking example of other text to define or to explain. So this is what the intertextuality meaning according to Julia Kristeva. So that is why she has mentioned every text is made of other text. So there is a requirement. For example, just gave you the example of synchronic and diachronic. So I gave you the word from the historical era, the ancient time, and now what are the meaning of those words have been changed. So this is what intertextuality you can remember. There is a need of there is a need to define the meaning so that we borrow other text. Okay. Then in discourse and power, Michel Foucault talked about knowledge is shaped. Knowledge is shaped. I'm giving you the highlights. Knowledge is shaped by power, power structure. Shaped by power structure. Okay. Then death of the author. Death of the author, Roland Barthes told us that reader creates meaning, not the author. Writer's work is finished once he or she has written the work. Now it's up to the reader how he creates, how he or she creates the meaning. So it's up to the reader now. So these are the important things you can remember. Now let me ask you the questions that appear in the exam, already have appeared, PYQs, maybe I have not added. I forgot to add the PYQs like I did in Russian formalism. Still, I can ask you. I remember few. So the PYQs that are already appeared in the exam related to post-structuralism, you have to remember who coined the term deconstruction. Who coined the term deconstruction? Comment your answer, everybody. Deconstruction, Derrida. Okay. Then another question, Lang and parole are terms given by, correct answer, Ferdinand de Saussure. Who wrote The Death of the Author? It is by Roland Barthes. The term mythologies is associated with which critic? Mythologies is associated with which critic? So it is by Barthes. Okay, Barthes. Then there is nothing outside the text. Who said this? There is nothing outside the text. Who said this? This is said by Derrida. Then another, which theory focuses on binary oppositions? Which theory, which literary theory focuses on binary oppositions? So it is structuralism. It is structuralism. Okay. Who introduced the term intertextuality? Intertextuality, it is by Julia Kristeva. Okay, it is by Julia Kristeva. So I hope you have got the point and got the difference between structuralism and post-structuralism. Try to get the key ideas of each literary theorist, literary theories, everybody. It will help you to memorize and get the concept clear easily. So thank you so much for joining. Do subscribe the channel. Share to more and more students, everybody, and let's meet in the next class. Take care of yourself and bye bye.